pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please roll call. Kristen Shorey.
Here.
Haley Keiser.
Here.
Christopher McLaughlin.
Here.
Stephanie Euler.
Here.
Debbie Wallace.
Here.
Shannon Knowles.
Here.
Grace Kelly. Ava Benjamin.
Here.
Agenda adjustments. There are none. Okay. Item 3, approval of minutes. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion that they're approved as presented.
Awesome.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Item 4, proclamations and presentations. A, committee acknowledgements.
I'll start. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Sanborn for staying late for our policy committee meeting last week and helping us with IT so that we had really great vocal quality with our new microphones and access for all. I would like to acknowledge the homecoming week, Spirit Week, and actually you girls could give us input too on your thoughts of it, but the football game was packed, to say the least. It was busy, fun, and really showed the pride that this community has when being a Hermon Hawk, and I was happy to be part of that. And also I heard some positives about the pep rally that happened Friday and the semi-dance Saturday night. And I just wanted to acknowledge all those that put in all the work to make that happen, because those are the things that we know students remember about high school, are those fun things.
I wanted to say I'm excited that for PADS we're bringing back the Junior Achievement Program. I'm very excited to be one of the volunteers to help out with that. I think it's a very important program. Also, there's an author that will be coming and we'll be providing some books for our students as well, so some exciting things there. Very cool to see Zach at the football game and just being so proud to be a Hawk and be there to support the kids. Your communications act has been amazing. The assembly, student of the month, everything, that's great. So thank you for all you do there. Wanted to recognize a couple of students. Veronica got PVC player for the girls golf. Kirsta had a hole-in-one, which is a huge accomplishment. Key Club has had to move into another room because they have that many students that are interested in it. Boosters, if anybody's looking to volunteer, I'd welcome you to join the Snack Shack. It's non-stop, 3 hours of a line with all the kids are buying soda and candy galore. Homecoming, thank you to the administrators for everything you did, making homecoming amazing. My son came home from the dance as a senior and he said, "Mom, that was the best event ever. We've danced non-stop." So thank you to all the volunteers for that event.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. B, public comments. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. We're about to convene into the public comment period of our meeting. While state law in Maine requires a public comment item on agendas of a full meeting of the school committee, we also believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues, and so we're pleased to have this as an agenda item. Having said that, please note that the committee is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion, and accordingly, please do not expect the committee to respond to your concerns and questions tonight. We take your concerns and questions seriously. We want to have sufficient time to process and research the issues if need be. At the outset, we ask speakers to identify themselves, their name, and town of residence. I also want to point out that per our policy, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel or specific roles. Please know, however, that we take personnel concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels. The committee will now entertain public comment from community members. Each individual speaker is allotted 3 minutes. And first up is Brian Veneziano.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity tonight. It's great to see students on the stage. I remember many moons ago when I was on the student council. It's always great to have that opportunity, so please take full advantage of it. Tonight I'd like to speak briefly about the budget. The reason why I started coming to school committee meetings and town council meetings was because of the budget. This spring, when I heard from neighbors and fellow parents the concerns about a budget that was had a surplus and yet may result in a tax increase, I almost didn't believe. And therefore I went to town council meeting and then the town meeting to see for myself, which brought me obviously to school committee meetings. To my dismay and somewhat disappointment, I haven't seen a budget brief we haven't seen a budget committee meeting that would address the issues that were brought up during the town meeting that resulted in the school's budget not being approved to the level in which was requested. This summer, I also received in the mail a shopping list from the teachers at the school that my boys go to, as well as the PTA put out shopping lists of materials that were needed to make sure that the classrooms ran correctly. And Mr. Grant, when I went to the first day or opening day to meet and greet, my wife nudged me and reminded me that don't complain to the teachers that you're having to bring in supplies, because we recognize that they bring in a great deal of supplies to make their classroom for our students run, which is still confusing for me as a resident of how we can continue to have a surplus in our budget and not have a budget meeting to address those issues. So with that, I just want to briefly make a couple thoughts to Mr. Grant. I noticed when you had to make your presentation to the town council, you mentioned that you only had 39 days on the job. And as a former leader and any leader in the community that has been in the position where you inherit a plan that was not yours, I'm definitely sympathetic to that and supportive of you with that. And somewhat impressed in the way in which you supported and defended the plan that you knew that you would have to execute this year. With that, I would ask you that it would be in your best interest if you provided us a budget report that trumpeted your successes and put a highlight on those things, the shortcomings within the budget throughout the year. It would do one thing or do two things for you. First of all, it would force the committee to acknowledge your budget and your budget constraints. It would also require them to approve the actions you're taking or provide you constructive criticism or guidance on things that they would like you to do. It is only in 7.5 short months, or somewhere around your 410th day on the job, that you once again will be in front of the town council having to pitch now your plan on what you want for a budget. It would be a very lonely podium to stand behind if your committee has not supported you with that. So I hope you are able to have those monthly budget meetings and reports so that we can be on board with you. If I could just have a few more minutes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, just please wrap up.
Mr. Chair, there is a requirement for the committee to have a monthly budget report. And if I could take right from the Hermon School Department AEC accountability report to the public, and it's paragraph F, financial reports, the superintendent designee shall provide the school committee a public monthly report concerning the financial condition of the school system. That is something that has not been outwardly done. Admitting that in the last 2 months, I have noticed on page 77 of the packet that there is somewhat of a budget report on what's going on within the school department. I think it is in your best interest and the best interest of the committee to have those monthly reports. It will bring us on board on what you want to do financially within the school department and may bring our support to you so that the next budget meeting next year, me personally would be more supportive of your plan. And then as I look at the rest of the committee members, students obviously excluded, you can do something tonight about this. I've noticed that at the end of every meeting, the chair asks you if you have any agenda items that you'd like to have for next month. I challenge you tonight for all of the committee members to tell the chair that you would like to have a budget committee scheduled this month, and next month you would like to have a full budget review done. This would acknowledge the fact that you are taking responsibility for the oversight of our school department's budget and are willing to provide that guidance to our superintendent so that we will have success in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Aaron York.
Hi, I'm Erin York. I am the president of the HEA and a citizen of Levant, so my kids will come here in just a couple of short years. I wanted to speak today to express to the committee what an amazing group of educators we have here in Hermon. I'm in my 18th year of teaching 3rd grade here, and throughout that time I've witnessed the group of teachers, ed techs, support staff, and administrators continue to grow professionally to a place where I can dare say I feel like we're the best around. As a classroom teacher, I'm part of a group of incredibly talented professionals. It's important to use that word professionals to describe what we do. Many of us not only went to college to earn our bachelor's degree, but we've gone on to our master's and above. We've spent years upon years dedicated to perfecting our craft. We've spent countless hours going to professional development workshops, taking extra courses, and studying the work of other top-notch educators to make ourselves better for our students. Everything we do is for our students. The hours spent preparing for each week, the sleepless nights thinking of how to help those children whose families can't help them, the advocating we do for students who need extra help in academics. Everything is for them. Because of the professional nature of our work, it's difficult for us to continue to sit back and allow the attacks on educators to happen. If we were doctors, lawyers, or electricians, no one would be telling us the way we do our job is incorrect. They wouldn't be calling us groomers or pedophiles or saying that we indoctrinate kids. They wouldn't bully us online and post our names and pictures of us reading books to our students, perpetuating hatred. To the citizens of Hermon, the fact is, we work in a public district. Our schools are for every child. Educators here know what's best for our students. We have the training, we have the knowledge, we have the experience. Please trust us. And those of you that don't trust us, you can take your children elsewhere. If you think there's a better fit for your family, do it. But please don't think that you know what's best for all children. And don't try to run out our amazing educators and administrators that we have in our district. And to the school committee, I ask that you keep your trust in us and know that we're doing everything we can to serve our students in this public district. If you know this, please stand up for us. Say something to those who are ignorant enough to slander us. Sometimes silence can be very loud. Thank you.
If I could just ask you to just hold the clapping. Thank you. Next up is Samantha Garrow.
Oh, I didn't mean to. I thought that
Oh, you're all set. Yep. Regina Leonard.
Hi there, Regina Leonard of Hermon. I wanted to start off by saying that I was really happy to see the social media account that was put up today, Mr. Grant, and especially thankful that you were posting the time and location of the meeting. I'm really happy to see that. I've heard the word transparency spoken of more from the board, the committee, excuse me. And while I'm happy to hear that, it is only words until there's actions. And today, when I saw that, I was like, there, good, we're in a step in the right direction. Suggestion I would like to make moving forward is that possibly you have your weekly email or blast that you send out if there's a subcommittee meeting or if there's a school committee meeting or any other thing that the public has an opportunity to be a part of, that you let the public be aware of that. Just as a suggestion, the more places that we can be transparent and put information out there, the better. I think parents, myself included, didn't know we could go to subcommittee meetings in the past. I'm just kind of becoming more aware and involved, and I'm researching. So I'm not alone in that, and other people want to be part of the process. So if we can just be transparent to include them, that would be great. Another question I have has to do with video recording. We've talked, or you have mentioned a few times, and I'm kind of curious why we have not seen a public recording put out to the public yet. We have this fine gentleman here that's volunteering to record them for us, and I think it's very helpful. I know it's hard to get to these meetings, and I'm just would like an answer of when we can expect that to be put forward. The town has been doing it for a long time. They post it quickly, and so I don't see what the issue is here. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is that I have fully requested documentation when it comes to the bills with your lawyers. This last month's invoice totaled $5,204.11. There are 16 items on that invoice, and every single one of them is in regards to the school board issues or for request issues. I think that's an astounding number for 1 month. I have had a hard time getting a solid answer on what your annual budget is for your lawyer fees. The only one I've seen is $10,000. I would like an answer to that when you can get to that, please. I think that this seems excessive. I don't know why there needs to be this many phone calls on these issues. And to be quite frankly, we shouldn't have to forward request things. It should be a lot easier to get them. I will thank you, Mr. Grant. I sent a request that was not a FOA, and I did get a response, and I appreciate that. Just moving forward, we just want to be more informed, and that's really all it is. We are not against teachers, as a lot of people may think. We are here for our children, and we want to be involved, and there is nothing wrong with that. That is actually part of the democratic process. I think the excessive amount of money that I'm seeing in these lawyers' bills every month, around $5,000, is taking away from education costs, money we could be putting in the classrooms, money that you could be giving to your teachers. So I would just like a report back on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Sear.
Excuse me, I got to take my get along. What I put on the stage are corn seeds. By looking at them, can you tell if they're going to be quality corn, mediocre corn, or something that's going to be just fodder? Last month you had 4 very well-spoken young students, and they were asking to be challenged in their instruction. They are that corn down there. Which ones do you think are going to be the ones that are going to make the best corn crop? All I'm asking for tonight is to consider letting them have quality education and challenge them to the best of their ability. As instructors, your job is to make sure that they can rise to the top of their ability. Challenge them and make them grow. Doesn't matter if they're at the bottom of the heap or the top of the heap. Make them grow to the best of their ability. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item 4C, presentation by Zach Freeman. And a good lead-in.
Thank you, Mr. Sear. Whenever I stand up in this microphone, I get like stage fright, even though I shouldn't. So if I say it up front, maybe it'll work better. So I want to thank the school committee for the opportunity to speak tonight about the honors level courses as they relate to Hermon Middle School. This short presentation is to give the school board insights into how the decision about honors courses was made, the research around the topic, and the next steps that we are taking as a middle school. First is how the decision was made. This past spring, the ELA teachers at Hermon Middle School met and discussed the student outcomes. It was suggested that to heterogeneously group students in the middle school, as they believed it would support all students in learning. This idea is based on research that shows tracking has a minimal impact on student outcomes in school data, that class sizes are lopsided when we run honors courses. Generally, this lent itself to class sizes of 10 to 12 for honor level courses and 4 classes of 18 to 20 for non-honors level courses. This year, however, the schedule was changed to increase the amount of student seat time in math, science, social studies, and English. However, with this change, non-honors courses would have swelled to 22 to 25 if honors classes were still being offered. There was a decision to go along with the LA department's recommendation to ensure appropriate class sizes for all students. A decision was made to ensure all students had increased time in ELA, science, math, and social studies. The research on the topic. The research that I have found on the topic to this model is in regards. John Hattie, in his research, shows that tracking streaming has an effect size of 0.12. It also shows detracking as having an effect size of 0.09, which when compared to the hinge point and other strategies is nearly negligible of having tracking or not having tracking. What this means is neither tracking or untracking students at the middle school shows a significant increase in student outcomes. In our particular case, though, it did show that more equitable class sizes would be held this year during 22-23 school year. NASP, the National Association of Secondary School Principals, state, NASP believes that while tracking was originally intended for practical pedagogical purposes, its unintended consequences make it an obsolete practice in the context of high expectations for all students. Therefore, this year I recommend we take the following steps. I will provide high-quality, relevant professional development to staff on differentiation and raising expectations for all students at Hermon Middle School. We begin this professional learning this coming Wednesday. Parents should advocate directly to their students' teachers when they believe that their students' expectations need to be raised. We are a team. We want to work as a team between parents and teachers. Lastly, I will thoroughly review the Hermon Middle School curriculum this school year and make recommendations on the 23-24 school year based on the findings, research, and input from all stakeholders, including teachers, parents, students, and the school committee. The goal of any school year is to ensure all students have access to the highest caliber education. I believe all involved in making these decisions have the best intentions for all students at Hermon Middle School. There is a path forward this school year to ensure every student has the best education possible, and I look forward to seeing what the next steps are. Thank you.
I'll open it up to questions. Or guidance.
You mentioned that there was going to be additional learning time in math, science, social studies, and English. What does that look like?
We went from 7 class period day to a 6 class period day. So that increased the amount of time a student receives on a daily basis by about 10 minutes. So when you put that across the entire school year, we're looking at dozens of extra hours of extra experience for students. Any other questions?
Yeah, Zach, how was this communicated to parents?
How was this decision communicated to parents?
Yeah.
I came to find out about the decision in the middle of August, and when I learned in my first letter to parents, it was communicated.
And have they been this new thought process or way of making sure that differentiated instruction is happening across all classrooms? Has that been communicated to them already?
It has been, and I've met with several parents, and I know that at least on 2 or 3 occasions we've had parents meeting with teachers, having those conversations. It's been good.
Okay, and I'm sure that they'll keep you updated how things are ongoing.
Absolutely.
In the past, have honors classes been offered for all subjects?
I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head.
I can answer that.
Mr. Grant?
So when I became the middle school principal in 2017, 2018, we did not have any honors classes at Hermon Middle School. And through the encouragement of Mr. Gardner at that time, we brought in honors ELA and honors math. We attempted to run honors science in the year after the shortened COVID year, and due to the experiential nature of the science, it was hard to create an honor science class because we get all the curriculum from the Rice Center at the University of Maine. So we pulled the plug on that last year. And I appreciate Mr. Freeman staying at the podium and taking the questions. Obviously, I was the principal in the spring who those English teachers came and talked to, and we decided to increase class time by dropping the one period. And that, in looking at the testing data, we just didn't feel like on classes of 84 to 85 kids, if you had 4 sections, we didn't have enough students to run an honor section, with 12 or 13, and then the other sections would have 22, like you said, 24 students. And like I said, we didn't feel like our English in particular scores warranted having an honors class at this time. And so at that time, we decided to, obviously, he cited a lot of great research. He's much more well-researched than I am. I have a lot of faith in our English department and our teachers, as well as what the testing scores were showing us. And we decided that the best course of action was to try to differentiate in the classroom, do the smaller groups, do the reading groups, let the kids read to a higher level, push them in their writing, keep the math honors, and revisit this topic in another year. So, Mr. Freeman, thank you so much for taking some of the heat for me on this one, but it ultimately was my decision.
Can I ask another question? And I'll ask it to both of you. So if a 5th grader wants to excel in English, are they able to take a 6th grade English?
Yes, we still have our GT students who we have. We are planning a November or December presentation with GT. I know that was one of the items that was brought up at the last meeting. Our GT students who are identified at about 5% per grade level, depending on where they excel and what teacher recommendation are. We have several students who, for example, in 8th grade come here and take courses, and they also grade skip, if you will, and 5th grade takes 6th grade, 6th grade takes 7th grade. It's not always the best model because you obviously have maturity issues that come with, moving up a level and not being with your peers, but that is one of the things that we offer for our gifted and talented students in those courses.
Thank you. I just think that's an important point to make, that there still is an option to some degree.
Yes, our gifted and talented program has not, we still have and offer those advancement opportunities for those students.
I think it's also important, we still have honors math in every grade level. Honors math still exists.
And offer algebra at the 8th grade level as well.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last comment. Honors math is where?
We offer honors math in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade still. That track, for lack of a better term, still exists. If you look at the research when it comes to math versus ELA, social studies, and science, there's a lot of research to show that same age able students need to be grouped together because the content of the material changes immensely, and you can differentiate up and down levels pretty easily. I say easily if you're a teacher, it's not easy in the classroom, trust me. But it's very difficult when you look at content. If you are on completely different content, it's very difficult to differentiate that way.
Is honors ELA offered in any grades at the middle school, or is it not offered anywhere?
At this time, it is not offered, but we do have several students taking courses up here at the high school that would be honorable.
I appreciate maybe this is more of a comment to the committee too. I appreciate the research. I do think there's a level of confidence that honors courses build to students, and I think from just a consistency standpoint, we have honors math. High school has honors and AP courses. I think that honors ELA program, while maybe the research indicates from a scoring perspective, it doesn't make a huge difference, but I think from a confidence perspective, for those students who want to be in that course, it may be helpful for them, and in the long term, it prepares them for honors level high school and AP courses. So I'd say just my recommendation to you and to the committee is that we relook at that for the next cycle of courses.
And we will be, the schedule for the middle school will be ready between the January and March timeframe. I'm not certain exactly when it will get done. there's going to be a lot of input from parents, students, and faculty members on what that looks like to be able to make the best decisions possible for Hermon.
And also, anyone from the committee should come to parent council when Leslie Smith does her presentation on multiple pathways, because that gives you a better understanding of the course offerings for the high school level.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. Freeman? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5, personnel. Sorry. Item 5, personnel, A, employment.
You have one employment there, Maggie Hayes, for the elementary school ed tech in the self-contained room. And I'll just add a note that I feel like she's been subbing for us, obviously, until her name can be brought before the board. You're probably going to be looking at another, we're still not fully, Cindy here, David? Hey, Cindy. We still are looking at a couple more, step 2, yeah. Still looking for 2 more educational technicians. And so plan on hopefully filling those in the next 30 days till the next meeting.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to employ Maggie Hayes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. B, co-extracurricular positions.
Jesse, can I jump in with a question? So, Mr. Grant, over the summer, we were able to give you the authority to hire the folks you needed. And my understanding is that the ed tech roles are pretty needed right now. And so is there a way to help you speed that up and not have to wait for it to come in front of the board? Or do you feel like that's the timeline that it's going to take anyway?
I think that's the timeline that it's going to take. And rather than get in that gray, I appreciate that, rather than get in that gray area of, I hired this position, then we don't have enough time. I prefer to bring those to the board if we bring those people on as long-term subs, and then hire them at the subsequent work.
So there's a way to get them more?
Yes, there is, yes. Thank you. And you have your co-extracurricular positions. Obviously, the asterisk represents if you weren't sure, new to the position, so those are there for your information.
Any questions, concerns?
Where could we find more information about extracurricular activities? I couldn't find anything online. Where do students or families learn more about what they are and what they're about?
So depending, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, to the building principals on extracurricular activities, finding out more information on that. You would, if you were a parent, you would want to contact the individual building principals. So all of these have, for example, extended music. What is that? You would want to contact Mr. Walsh at the high school, and he can provide you with, all of these have a mission, a description, when the clubs meet. I know extended music is more like the band, the performing arts, that they do all the basketball games and things like that, so that might not be the best example. Right, Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, that's not a great example.
Okay, sorry about that. Give me a good example.
French club, Thursdays at 2:30, they make crepes. They do.
So, again, I would contact the building principals, and they can provide you a description, a mission statement, when the clubs meet, or they can direct you to the advisor. Sorry, I should point at Ms. Benjamin, but they can direct you to the advisor of the club, who can give you additional information, what they have planned for, different fundraising that they're going to try to do, etc.
Any other questions? Comments? Item 6, old business A, excused absence of school committee members. Shannon, the last regular meeting. Can I get a motion to excuse Shannon?
I'll make a motion to excuse Shannon from the September meeting.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. B, policies.
Obviously, this is a second reading for the following policies. JICK, J-I-C-K, we call it JICK when we're doing investigations and whatnot. J-I-C-K-E1, J-I-C-K-E2, and JKDs. And so you have 3 that are attached to bullying. One is the actual definition of bullying. The other one is the reporting form. Again, the major changes there from your current policy were around whether a student was in the identification process or had an IEP or 504, basically, right? If they were a special education student. And then the major change to JIC2 or E2 is the response form. There used to be, under the old policy, you would fill out your investigation form, you then fill out your disciplinary form, you then had a response form that you sent home to parents with the different steps. So say the bullying was validated, you then sent that form home to parents saying this is what we did. And there were multiple different forms. This has condensed most of those forms down. We usually do accompany this with a letter also. I know I did it in my practice. I know most of the administrators have a letter that goes with that. So, but it just really, that does a good job at condensing all the forms down into a couple of different, all into one policy, one investigation, one response form. And then the suspension, the JKD, that just clarifies on some new law that students, unless it's, I think it's term that we put there, unless it's harmful behavior. Students in 5th grade or under cannot be suspended. That's the primary change to JKD. Let me see here. Students who are in grade 5 or below may not receive after-school suspension except when a student has violated the Federal Gun-Free School Act or presents an imminent danger of serious physical injury. And that was obviously not in our past handbook.
There's KLGA, Relation to School Resource Officers, on the next page.
And then on the second page is KLGA, Relations with School Resource Officers and Law Enforcement. Obviously, we feel like we should get that policy in place if we are able to move on a school resource officer for the district this winter.
Okay, we can take those in a group or we can take them individually. I do need a motion.
I've got some comments about the JICK policy, so I'm happy to do that now or wait till. Yeah.
I move to approve the second reading of policies as listed.
Seconded?
Any discussion?
Sure. So there's a couple places in the bullying policy that I think we might want to look at in terms of inclusion. So I'm looking at places where we have his/her or he/he or she, and I would just recommend doing they, there. And then I have questions about the sections where there's notes. Will these notes appear in the final version of the policy? There's some blanks in terms of there are places where the number of days might not be clear, and then there are some bolded note sections.
Mr. Riggleoff, can you give me an example of that second question?
Yeah, sure. So in the JICK policy itself,
Yep.
on page 4 or 5, there's a larger note section and then a smaller note section.
You're talking under delegation of responsibility.
Yeah, there's a staff training note section and a delegation of responsibility note.
Oh, that's okay. Definition itself. Okay, so under staff training, the note would not be there. And the same thing under delegation of responsibility.
Yeah, so my question is the note intended to be part of the final policy?
No, it's not.
So that will
It would be gone, yes.
Those note sections are coming out?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so then I think for me, it's just looking at the JICK E2 and a couple instances in JICK where I would suggest we put they or them instead of the he/she.
Chris, can you give us a reference point? Just looking at an example of that.
Sure. So in JICK, the bottom of page 1, under bullying definition A2, and on page 4 of 5, under delegation of responsibility in that same policy, third paragraph under delegation, a student or his/her parent guardian. So my perspective on this, that especially in a bullying policy, my hope is to be as inclusive as possible, and removing some of those gender binary pieces I think would be important. And I see several instances of that in JICK E2. For example, page 2 and 6, halfway down, meeting, interview of student. Underneath that, communications with parents. I'm looking at the white pages. Yeah, okay.
What's the statute say? Is goes from the statute? What's the statute say on that?
This comes from the Maine School Management Association.
But what's the statute say on defining whether or not the verbiage of?
So these are typically pulled from statute, and so when we look at a policy from Maine School Management, this would be what they recommend we have for policy. So
it's in line with the current statute then?
it should be, yes. This is what was sent to me. These were sent over, I want to say, late last fall from Maine School Management. And so this would be their recommendation and how they define the statute.
Yeah, so I'm not recommending you change the statute. I'm just recommending you get inclusive with the language, especially in a bullying policy where sexual orientation and gender identity are also defined.
Chris, just a question, and it's just me inquiring, thinking of your perspective. On page, the end of JIC, the first page of JIC, where it says bullying A2, and it says placing a student in reasonable fear of physical harm or damage to, could it be there, THEIR?
That's exactly what I'm recommending.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought
it's just
you wanted
putting.
they, I thought you wanted they/there.
No, I'm
there.
sorry. I'm saying remove the his/her and just put.
Yeah, I think there.
Yeah, sorry if that wasn't clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not recommending adding another option.
Right, it's just neutral.
Correct.
Right.
Chris, I'm a little slow, so I was going to have the same recommendation. I missed the second example on JICK E2.
I think it's on page 2 of 6,
Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
There's 2 on there that I saw.
So on E2, there's 2 on 2 of 6 and 2 on 3 of 6.
Okay, so just changing she to they.
What they have, yeah.
Yep.
Because you wouldn't say has.
Correct.
Sorry, most people know me. I'm the edit police on our English.
I know you are.
Language of policies.
Those were my only comments.
So Chris, you would need to make a motion to amend the motion on the table.
Sure. So I would move to amend the motion on the table and make modifications to the grammar in those sections.
we have a second?
I'll second Chris's motion. I was just looking through the rest of the pages, sorry.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous.
That was for all the policies, correct? We accepted all of them. Thank you, thank you.
Oh.
Takes us to C, superintendent goals.
I just wanted to report out on, I believe it was my second goal, or maybe it was like a 2A, 2B. We do have a district Facebook page now, and it's the Hermon School District, and it's a giant blue H, because I couldn't get the Hawk to download. So I think the Hawk is in there now, but it's not what you actually see when you search Hermon School District. I also created an Instagram account and thought I made an Instagram post. Did anybody see my Instagram? I think I have one. Do I not have an Instagram post?
I followed you, but I don't know what it was.
So the Instagram account is micah.grandhawks. And I thought I put an Instagram post up of Veronica and I linked it to Facebook. But then I guess you can't Facebook to Instagram. It's got to be the other way or something. So anyways, there have been several Facebook posts this week. And I'm working on figuring out my Instagram account. Never thought I would hear myself say those words. So Micah.Grant, Hawks is Instagram. Follow me, follow the district. And Facebook is Hermon School District, and it's got a big blue H when you see the different Hermons come up. So just wanted to report out, and I am going to try to post like meetings, subcommittee meetings, obviously good things that are happening in the district. One of the first posts was just, we have a bottle drive for HHS athletic boosters, or not bottle drive, but like an ongoing bottle drop off, and a lot of our K-8 parents don't know about that necessarily. So just trying to put some of that type of information on there. The Instagram, my goal is to put more student success on the Instagram page and show students in either the learning environment or the successes in whether it's co-curricular, extracurricular. And then obviously, I continue to use the Friday Messenger for the email, and we'll continue to try to keep meetings and people up to date on, again, some of the things that are happening. So that was one of the goals that I wrote to, and I just wanted to give those addresses, if you will, so that people can follow and like.
Okay, any questions? All right, item 7, new business A, policies.
So you have the first reading of the following policies, BDD, BEDH, and KDB. They are the school committee superintendent relationship. That one was just a review. And we're looking at the sample policy, moving school management, looking at our current one. They're very closely aligned. Actually, they're almost identical, and not much has changed. So that's just a review. Then we have public participation in board meetings. The major change to BEDH from your current policy, I'm going to flip to my notes here, excuse me, was, so this one, Chris, we actually did strike the note, so that's, I'm trying to remember to do that. I'm the note taker at the subcommittee meetings, and my notes don't always I know I have to bring Jody in to like walk her through my handwriting, so I apologize, Jody. But the major change to BEDH is we have included written correspondence can be directed to the school committee for consideration at the meeting. We did feel like that was important to keep. We also have members who wish, another major change, members who wish to have an item placed on the agenda in 2 on page 3 or 4. It's a red underline 2. Typically that was, you had to submit that Thursday prior to a meeting. As you know, the meeting minutes go out on Thursday. So that is not enough time to put something on the agenda. So we changed that to 7 calendar days preceding. We were going to do Monday, but then obviously sometimes we do have meetings that are not on a Monday due to the holidays. And then the other, I think the last significant change and or discussion that came from that is, it is something that you practice, but it was just putting a little bit more structure around it. It's in your rules, is allowing for comment on individual items if invited by the board chair. And so that's back on page 1. So you have public comment may also be invited just prior to committee discussion of individual items. So if the chair feels like an agenda item is important and it's going to require action, he or she in the future can decide, we'd like to hear from the public, and so you can invite public comment at that time on that specific agenda item. So that's that just adds a little bit more structure. Right now, I think it's in the rules, it says that people can raise their hand and then be recognized, and that's really not, in my opinion, a good practice given the space. People want to come up, speak to something specific, and be invited to do so again at the inclination of the board chair. So those are some of the major changes, and then obviously we'll have to reflect the school rules at our next meeting and start bringing that policy in so that the committee rules and the public participation make sure that those two things line up. In the, I call it follow-up, but obviously the Freedom of Information Act, that's your last policy for first reading. And I just want to say thank you to Shannon Knowles. She and I she had given me a recommendation of stop trying to take on 6 policies at a subcommittee meeting because it's impossible. And she just said, go for 2 or 3, talk about them, hash them out. So I'm just bringing 2 or 3 to every meeting, and I appreciate that suggestion from another board chair in a different district. It was really helpful. I didn't feel that pressure to get through all those policies at the last meeting. The major change to KDB is the fee structure. Our fees, and here's the thing, when you have a policy that contradicts law, you follow the law. Even though your policy might say one thing, you obviously can't contradict the law. So we had our last review of this in February of 13. The fee structure has changed quite a bit in the current legislation from last October, and we've been following that, but we didn't have it reflected in our policy. So a fee of 10 cents per page, a fee of $25 an hour, it's capped there. And it's 2 free hours, not 1 free hour, so that's reflected in this policy. And then we added our policy, our old policy under D on page 3 of 4. It said a charge for the mailing costs, but we do not do that. We don't currently practice that. We just mail things certified. So right now, it's just may apply. If we ever got to the point where we felt like we had to charge, we have that option. So those are the 3 primary changes, and those are your 3 policies for first reading.
Again, we can take those all together, or we can take them one at a time. I need a motion.
Motion to approve the first reading of the policies BDD, BEDH, and KDB.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Okay, let's start with BEDH. First, in the policy subcommittee meeting, the policy you handed out included subcommittee meetings, and I noticed that you took that all out of the upcoming policy to not include subcommittee meetings. Can you clarify, or how can we add that back in?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Are you stating that you're asking why it doesn't say public participation at board meetings and subcommittee meetings?
Well, for starters, you actually, you clarified that it's not subcommittee meetings, but the policy that you gave for review at the subcommittee meeting, actually, the state recommended the opportunity for public participation at board subcommittee meetings is not required, but may be permitted. I think that's really important to include. Because we don't have a subcommittee policy unless you are planning on developing one.
Can you just restate your question?
So I would like to include the part where the state law recommended opportunity for public participation at board subcommittee meetings is not required but may be permitted. The policy that you put forward actually removes public participation or almost attendance at subcommittee meetings.
I don't see attendance there.
I don't, yeah.
This policy applies only to meetings of full board meetings, not subcommittee meetings. So that means that these rules don't apply to subcommittee meetings. The policy that you gave out at the policy subcommittee suggested that you include subcommittee. It's not on there because you did include it. I have the original from the subcommittee meeting that I attended.
And it's BEDH that's in your hand?
Yes. The EDH MSMA sample policy, public participation at board meetings. And it also suggested that you would designate a portion of the agenda. So, first issue is I want to include subcommittee meetings. You are removing that with this policy.
I'm looking
Want
at
to
an
make a
electronic
motion?
copy.
Excuse me?
I'm looking at an electronic copy because I can't follow along. We don't have a copy of what you're looking at, so I don't remember in the middle of our discussion at the policy meeting talking about, oh, let's exclude subcommittees, so I'm having trouble
I'm not saying
following.
that you did, I'm saying the policy that you handed out includes the opportunity, that the wording is there, and the policy you guys put forward today does not include that. I would like to make a motion to include subcommittee meetings.
So you're talking about page 3 of 4 of, in our packet, where it's lined out, opportunity for public participation, is that page 3 of 4 of BDH? On the bottom. Is that what you're proposing to add back in?
Yes, thank you. I'll make a motion to add that back into the policy.
Do I have a second? Any seconds?
I just need a few minutes because I'm trying to understand what we're talking about.
I would entertain it if it followed the same rules that we follow now, which is,
I think we needed second first before we
oh,
can continue discussion.
And I can retract that if you want to have discussion. I'll retract my amendment.
I just want to be clear that the policy about the full board meetings has plenty of opportunity for public participation. And the piece that I think you added was the ability for members of the public to add items to the agenda or have conversation even outside of the public comment period. So at a first reading or even a second reading of a policy, a member of the public could seek to participate in that conversation regardless of whether they signed up at the beginning of the meeting. Do I have that, am I understanding that right?
I believe so. Yeah, I mean, my take on this, and I wasn't part of that, was part of the discussion at the subcommittee meeting, but the public does have two opportunities on all of our policy reviews. We have to do a first reading and we have to do a second reading before we can amend or approve the policy and get the final rating of the policy. I see these subcommittee meetings for policy as a workshop for not just the two committee members, right, but superintendent to draft, actually do the work to draft the policy, to make a recommendation for it. It could also, depending on the policy, you can include a number of teachers, a number of administrators, guidance counselors, librarians, you name it. There's a lot of people that that work on pulling together just a draft policy to submit to us as a larger committee. And the hard work really should be done there, and I think interruptions will delay that while the public still gets 2 opportunities to provide their input for all of our policies before they're in final approval.
I believe, so I just want to be clear, this is the same thing that I handed out at the subcommittee meeting. This is the same sample policy, just has like red and crossouts, right? So it's the same document, just with what
But you
we're
removed
looking
the
at.
part that would give the opportunity for the public to attend, basically.
Yeah, it's
Part
struck.
of that.
Yeah, it's struck.
Right.
Yes, yeah, not removed, it's.
I want to include it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So when you said removed, I'm looking for something that's not there.
As in, right, I want to include that as part of the policy.
Okay. So I believe my comment at the subcommittee meeting was that I don't personally feel, I think the subcommittee feels this way. I'll let Debbie and Kristen speak for themselves, obviously, but we don't feel like Mr. Keith said that that's an appropriate time to solicit feedback from the community. We're in draft mode at that point, but moving forward, we are looking to include parents on policies that would require or we would want to hear from them. And so I think that's what I said at the subcommittee was, for example, at the next subcommittee meeting for policy, pulling in a parent or 2 to talk about what their thoughts are and try to gain the feedback that way, but not through public participation.
Let me just clarify too, you said attendance, so I just want to clarify my comments that people should be allowed to attend those subcommittee meetings. So if there's something in here that says that they're not allowed to, we should make sure that gets corrected.
Well, it definitely gets gray real quick when you say that the way a public meeting works. I personally feel that policy committee should be a full board. That's what I would in the future like to see this change because it affects our entire school and I think we need to work as a workshop more and have a workflow where people can work together and share those things so we're not here using.
I think that's what we're doing now.
I feel like that is what this is.
But like he just said, it's distraction to have parental input at a subcommittee meeting.
Haley, I just want to clarify here, if you think there's something in here we need to be clear on attendance, then we should add that. I want to make sure that we have clarity on the public can attend these.
Yes.
I think the discussion, I think we're all in agreement on attendance, right? The discussion really is around the participation at that point during the draft.
But why subcommittee meetings can we allow parents to speak and be part of it and other subcommittee meetings they can't, like policy? Why wouldn't we want their involvement? I don't understand.
I think as Jesse mentioned earlier, that we do use it as a workshop and to be the people who are creating the draft. So if we feel as representatives of the committee that we need input from other people, then we will invite them to be part of the workshop to get the input to make the draft to bring to the committee for first and second reading.
Has that ever happened?
Yeah, well, it has for school members, but as Jesse just said, we are going to be doing that moving forward on those topic areas that are really sensitive to many parents that we've heard feedback from.
I think it needs some clarification, this policy that you're putting forward. And also, you've made and mentioned a few times that you may make it, I'd like it to say the public comment will be invited, not may be invited.
Where are you seeing that? What
Right on the first page, optional, under the goal area. And Mr. Grant mentioned it several times that they want to hear from the public and may make that opportunity. I wanted to say will make that opportunity, that it's always an agenda item.
For the full committee.
Yes.
Isn't public comment on the full committee required by law?
It is required by law, but it still says the word may, so since it is the law.
This is in addition to public comment.
So we're still going to allow people to speak at new business items, agenda items as well, or just?
We're not, I don't think we are limiting during the public comment period.
In fact,
The item we have every meeting, we don't limit the public to talking about non-agenda items. They can come up and talk about agenda items or non-agenda items. It's open during that time. I'm okay with this policy unless we want to add some clarity on, I don't know if it belongs in here, but some clarity on just a line that subcommittees are open to the public. If there's confusion on that.
Where you're specifying that it doesn't, sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
I was just looking at the title.
Oh, that as well, yeah.
It says public participation at board meetings. So we're currently, and we would say committee meetings, but we are currently here right now. I'm just trying to, I see what you mean about the other section about public comment may also be invited. So I think what my interpretation of that was similar to like the new and old business
That was mine too.
sections. Yes.
So I don't know if the committee is still confused, but the paragraph before that says the committee will designate a portion of its agenda as opportunity for public participation. During the time allotted, public participation, members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the school, except for personnel matters in place, which we do every meeting. Then it goes on to say public comment may also be invited just prior to committee discussions of individual agenda items. So that's clearly stating that this would be a second opportunity. Currently, it says may, if we feel like there are items that we want to hear more public comment on. I like May because we're going to have an agenda item that says move from December 5th to December 12th. I don't know if you want to have the opportunity for people to speak to that. It's part of the committee's job, or remind the committee is to do the business of the school. And I think some things are not, we don't need to hear from the public on. Certainly there are things that you want to hear from the public on. So again, I'll just state that this is a second opportunity for public comment to be invited. The first one you have to have, obviously.
Well, as you know, if you're clarifying that this does not include subcommittee meetings in the very first paragraph where it did not used to be there, I find that concerning, and I just want to be sure that.
So maybe in that second sentence, Haley, all meetings of the Hermon School Committee and subcommittees are open to the public.
Yep.
Would that address your concern?
Yes.
Did you see where that was, Jessica?
Yeah.
So it's the second sentence on page 1 of that policy. All meetings of the Hermon School Committee are open to the public, and I think I would be in support of adding all meetings of the Hermon School Committee and
All regular and subcommittee
subcommittees.
meetings are open to the public.
Yep, that makes sense to me to add that piece there.
Thank you, Chris.
But I still don't think that does that clarify what you wanted, or you're proposing to add back in that last sentence? Is that?
Ideally, I would still like to add it in. I think the public hasn't been overly involved in subcommittee meetings, and they may not need to be in the future, but I don't want parents to feel like they're being restricted from being heard, or anybody for that matter, and I feel like this sends that message, and I want to be sure that we're letting them know they can be involved and attend.
It's state law that the subcommittee meetings are open to the public. My concern with adding in here is that this whole policy is about full board meetings and not about non-quorum meetings.
So we should write a policy then for subcommittee meetings, because we don't have one.
It's actually required by state law
What is?
that they're open to the public. So
Yes,
I-
but we have no guidelines, so I'm asking, should we write a subcommittee policy?
I mean, that could be a recommendation for the policy committee, subcommittee to look at. I think it would just be a replication of whatever state law is. But I would be fine with that. I just don't think it fits within this policy because this is for a full board policy and not a subcommittee.
What was the reasoning for striking the last paragraph again about the subcommittees?
Yeah, Shannon, so the idea there was that when we are in draft mode and workshop mode, we don't want to have public comment regarding policies that are, potential policies, current policies that are being drafted.
And your idea of participation versus, well, one, I want to be sure that they can attend, and two, if they want to have input, it's not always relevant, but if there's nothing wrong with having the opportunity to have the public involved.
I think what this policy, though, is doing is reinforcing that the place for public comment and participation is the full meeting.
Right.
Yep.
It is, except for I see the point where we've got to have a policy on subcommittee meetings. At the end of the day, I was suggesting if there's a time limit attached to it, whatever it may be, we want to be able to hear from people. Is it going to alleviate the comments that we're going to hear here?
Right, exactly.
It's just my thought. We're going to hear the comments either way. I get that the workshop is our opportunity. If I look at the technology committee one, we did have input from a parent because we invited them to attend. I think it's our opportunity. To maybe not eliminate confusion at these meetings. With the, when I look at, okay, tonight there were 4 people that spoke, that's 12 minutes. If there's a limit, like granted, I hear what you're saying, the workshop is our time to work, absolutely, it's our only time to work in small groups, but if we say, okay, the first 10 minutes are gonna be for that opportunity for people to speak, you sign up first, you get the opportunity.
So I'd just say, it sounds like the recommendation is to the subcommittee to look at developing a policy for governing subcommittees. So that's a recommendation for the subcommittee. I think we got to get back to this regular board meeting policy. And we have a motion and a second.
Well, I have questions on a different
So-
policy too, I think. I may be wrong. No, you're good. It was just this one. So, what's the verdict?
What? I didn't hear what you said.
So do you want me to make a motion to at least add, like Chris said, the second line, all meetings of the Hermon School Committee, regular and subcommittee, are open to the public?
Why would you add subcommittee if we were gonna have a separate policy maybe,
I just can't trust that we're going to. How do I ensure that we're going to write such a policy?
because
How does that work? I don't know. I'm asking.
yeah, no, I guess I'm confused. How do we trust that we're going to? We're gonna bring it up at the next policy meeting. It sounds like we can bring that up as a recommendation for them to look at.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in-
On all the policies
all
you're talking about.
policies. Yep. First reading.
Mike is smiling. What you thinking? you're smiling, what are you thinking?
October 25th, 4 o'clock, subcommittee. Just saying that out loud so people know what it is. October 25th. We're going to be looking at policies for subcommittee meetings.
Oh, also, do I have to make a motion to change that, the title, having this board meeting, public participation at board meetings, do you want that to be school committee?
I think that's grammatical, they can update that.
Okay.
For the second reading.
For the second reading, yeah. That's good catch.
Yeah, we try to always flag board to committee. Most school districts have boards. We have a committee. So
I also have a recommendation to the subcommittee. I think and actually, Mr. Grant, you mentioned this already, policy BED, the Hermon School Committee rules. What we're adding in here, at least for first reading, will supersede section 18, at least 1, 2, and 3 of that policy. So you guys just need to look at that policy and strike out or remove or update that piece as it is kind of
From BED?
from the BED. Yep.
Right, so those are the public participation parts of that. So you want to strike that out?
What we're adding here is, would replace this.
Ooh.
So
It's talking about the public commenting during agenda.
Well, then why would we remove it? If it's what we're adding in there, why would we want to take it out?
Jesse, are you talking about you'll be taking out BED because you're moving the elements of BED
Right.
into this policy?
Right. It's not the whole one, it's just
policy
one section.
have the two pieces to it.
You did, I wish you guys would communicate that, so.
It was just it was a subcommittee recommendation. We can look at BED. That's all. If you look at that, Haley, the section 18, 1, 2, and 3 are what we're saying.
I don't have that policy because you didn't print it as part of it, right?
No. It's just, I looked at the policy before the meeting and I this read like a policy that we already have. So I looked at the
I
policy
have
that we have.
On my own. So let's strike out what you want? 18.
It would be 18, 1, 2.
So, may I make a suggestion?
Yep.
So rather than striking, which you haven't brought a motion to the floor or made an agenda item adjustment to talk about policy BED, which is your rules, but it is your policy. You would want to send this, obviously, this is a subcommittee, can pick this up on October 25th, 4 o'clock here at the high school. And, sorry, I'll put it on Facebook too. Those are the easy posts when you could just like put in a time. Those are the easy ones, no pictures or anything. And so what we would do is we would amend this policy to reflect your participation rules in this policy. I'm not necessarily saying we would look at section 7 and 8 and 9, but what we would do is we would say, we're going to have public comment according to this first reading at this time and then this time, and we would then put that language in here and we bring that back to you to then vote on and approve so that they jive, right? So your rules would follow your policy, but ironically your rules and your policy are both in policy. So we just should go through the appropriate channels. So does that make sense? We just want to bring this one right behind it and make sure that they say the same thing in respect to public comment. Because you're going to have it twice now. And you currently don't have it written that way in BED. That's all. So I just don't want you to strike anything because you haven't brought that to the floor yet.
Yeah, sorry, just for clarity, I didn't mean to strike it now as part of this. It was just my recommendation for the subcommittee is just to look at BED, just to make sure that the policy we're approving first reading on now marries up with the policy that exists under BED, Hermon School Committees.
And I made a note.
Is it possible, I don't want to complicate it, but to table BEDH so that they're done simultaneously? Because if they affect one another, what I'm hearing is one's going to be in a second reading, one's going to be in a first reading. So should we just be consistent and table this one? and do them together next time?
Technically, if what you're saying is true, that is what's written here. I like what's written on BED. So I don't want to see that removed, and you're saying it's the same thing, and
What's being added under BEDH is public comment may also be invited just prior to committee discussions or individual or specific agenda items requiring more action, which is what BED is doing as well.
yeah. So like the specifics of saying that require, what did you say that? That require action, I can't remember where that is. Again, that's another way to limit it in the future. You say it looks like it's including it, I feel like it's risky. So I want to be very clear that, and changing verbiage to will include makes it more concrete for me.
I can't remember if I was the motion or the second, but perhaps we look at them all individually. I think it's a valid point if one policy is affected by a couple of others, that perhaps we look at them all together, meaning at the next meeting, we would look at the first reading of BED, BEDH, and subcommittee all at once.
Especially since the meeting was incorrect on the agenda.
Well, no, my concern is if they all affect each other, let's just get them done all at once, because I don't want one lagging the other.
I'll second that motion if that's the motion step.
You'd have to retract your motion.
I did.
Okay, and then you would have to retract or not.
I'll retract my second.
And I make a motion to table BEDH until the next meeting so that we can review it together with BEDH, BED, and a subcommittee.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Go ahead.
I both probably thinking the same.
If it's not October, then November.
My discussion is that I don't know if there's a subcommittee policy. I mean, I think that I don't want to say we're definitely going to have a subcommittee policy if we're looking into guidance on that. And also, if there's a way to, I do think we need to make those jive. Yes, I agree with that part of it.
I was going to say two things. First is that I will reach out to municipal management and see if they have a subcommittee sample policy, and Drummond and Woodson, see if they have a subcommittee sample policy, so we can obviously start there. You're still, looks like you're heading in the direction of sending these back. The second thing is that right now, your BED, your rules, there's no sample policy on school rules, so that one will, as a subcommittee meeting, we will do our best to bring you rules that jive with the policy and the rules, but there is no sample for BED for rules. So, you'll have to obviously discuss that when it comes to first reading, and we'll try to make those two line up the best that we can.
I don't necessarily think there has to be a separate subcommittee one. I think it's just allowing what was struck out in the last one, that opportunity with some limitation as to what we do now. Meaning the opportunity for public participation at board subcommittees is not required but may be permitted.
Yeah, I still agree that, I still like that to be in there. So you want to take it back when you talk about it, or you want to add it in now, whatever works best for you with that.
Are you in agreement that maybe we don't need a separate subcommittee one if that sentence was allowed?
Yes, I agree with that. Kristen would probably thank us.
It's just saying it's not required, but it may be permitted, because we all know there's certain ones where people are going to want to provide input.
It also means it may not be, so it's still in the control of the chair. We need to define how that works. So I'll make the motion to add it, or would you like?
Well, I think we have We have a motion on the table now to table it.
To table them, and then next,
Right.
we're just provide, I'm
Sorry,
just
we
saying,
have a-
send it back to
Right,
workshop.
did we have a second on that?
I did.
Second, okay. So, any other discussion or amendments to the table? All right, all those in favor of tabling? All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Okay, it takes us to B 22-23 School Committee Goals Workshop Date.
You have in your packet your school committee goals from last year. And I provided those to you. And my recommendation would be that you look those over in the next couple of weeks and either plan on discussing new goals at the next school committee meeting or setting a special workshop date to discuss what you would like your goals to be for the 22-23 school year, or perhaps maybe a 2-year goal. I know sometimes annual makes more sense because boards change. But anyways, that would be my recommendation. Either think about a workshop date or think about bringing this back and making changes at the next school committee meeting. I did not intend for you to have that discussion tonight.
Any recommendations on that? Maybe, again, it sounds like two options. We could have a workshop date specific to goals, or we could have it as an agenda item the next meeting and use that as a workshop.
I would lean towards just having it be an agenda item for our next meeting.
That's exactly what I was gonna say as well.
I couldn't hear you, sorry.
Just have it be an agenda item for our next meeting.
Everyone okay with that?
So it'll just be public, like, discussion like this, basically. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, C, December meeting date change.
I believe there are a couple of people who, I know Chris was one, Kristen was the other. Yeah, we have 2 members that cannot attend on December 5th. So making, my recommendation would be that we move the meeting to the 12th to hopefully, you just can't predict weather. So hopefully weather, barring any bad weather, we can meet on the 12th.
Do you need a motion for that? Motion to move the December 5th meeting to December 12th.
I'll second.
Any discussion? For everybody?
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor? That's unanimous. 49, Annual MSMA Fall Conference.
So, and I apologize, we're throwing a lot of stuff at you. We had the delegates conference that Chris went to, Governor Woodson did a training that we just got 2 of you signed up for. This is another conference hosted by Maine School Management Association. It's October 27th and 28th. So I wanted to ask to see if there were any members from our board, from our committee, I'm going to say that, from our committee who are interested in attending. I know it does require obviously quite a time commitment. It would be 2 days, all day, down in Augusta, but I know that it can be when you look at some of the things that are offered, and Maine School Management does a wonderful job. When they do something, they do it really well. So just wanted to put that up there to the committee to see if anybody was interested or available.
Yeah, that's October 27th and 28th during the day. Anyone else interested?
No, I'm attending the other workshop Wednesday evening.
And for Haley, will Jody get her signed up? How does that work?
Yeah, so typically what we do, if you haven't noticed, obviously, is we wait a little bit to make sure that we have the, we have all the responses back on the trainings. We then put a purchase order through, get you folks signed up, and then try to make sure that the confirmation email gets sent to both us and you and let you know. So we would obviously, we get you signed up on that, and then she should get a welcome email from the school management, and we would get the same confirmation because we paid. So we will let you know as soon as you get signed up, and you should also go at this roughly the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Grant, you know if any of these are recorded sessions? I know they're live in Augusta, but do they record the sessions?
I don't know, Chris. I will ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, takes us to item 8, reports, admin reports.
All right. So just a couple of things. Friday, we had in addition to my report, we had the well got hooked up at the elementary school. So we are now fully connected to the new well. We do have to wait a couple more weeks because testing has to take place on the water quality. So we are waiting, but the well is connected, trench is dug, everything is good to go. I know Mrs. Davis is going to be very happy about that. Yeah.
My ulcer will start
Yeah.
hopefully now.
Right. And the breaker's not clicking off every 10 minutes and having to run and flip the breaker on. We do have the flushes going on that, but there are ways so that it doesn't go to the drinking water. So that will be welcome among the clouds for hooking that up and just doing that on a Friday afternoon at from I think it was 3. And I got the text message at 7:30 or 8 o'clock that night that it was completed. So I know that they have to obviously come and do that basically post school hours because we can't turn the wire off for obvious reasons at the elementary school. So that is done. The second thing is I did research the fuel tank. I know there were some concerns that were, I think it was public comment and maybe by the board members, but did a little bit of research into the SIPS project for the fuel tank, which is going in, or planned to go in for, it has to be done for January of 2024. And so in talking to Mr. Davis, one of the things that we did find out, I think the primary concern that I heard was what if the tank leaks? And we obviously have a variety of wells, not only our well, but there's also other wells. I mean, if you look at an aerial map of the middle school and where the tank is, so this is the tank as you drive in past the superintendent's offices on your left. This tank is just down to the right. There's a lot of other residential dwellings around that area, from the apartment buildings to the gas station, on Patton Drive, etc. So one of the things that we did find out, well, the first thing that we found out was the tank's been ordered. So we've already ordered the in-ground tank because it was a 6-month waiting period for that. We know we have to do that job this summer. So when the budget got approved, we ordered the tank. We also found out that with those tanks, and this kind of comforted me, there's 2 containment systems, or 2 monitoring systems. The first system is that there's leak sensors, and I believe there are 4 leak sensors. There could be 3, but I think he said 4. And those have to be tested annually. So all those tanks have leak sensors on them, and they also are double walled. So you have an internal where the gasoline is held, but then you have an external wall around the first tank. So if there is a leak, we would be alerted to it. That's tested annually. And then you have a second wall around that first tank for containment. And if we breach the second tank, then obviously we would be digging that up. I don't know what the protocol is for the first wall leak. I believe it is also dig it up. Jason was looking into that. Basically, ultimately our mindset is that the old tank, which is coming out, is 30 years old, and we have not had an issue with the old tank, and our belief is that this system and technology is better than it ever has been. So it's, honestly, we think it's safer to put another well-made, well-monitored tank back in the ground, 8,000 gallons of fuel below ground, than it is to put 8,000 gallons above ground where we have parent traffic going by and buses going by daily. So we think it's better to have 8,000 gallons buried and well-monitored than it is to have 8,000 gallons up and trying to put some type of weather barrier over them, as well as putting cement pillars around them. And again, if you haven't been in the middle school parking lot, it's a tight lot, there's a lot of traffic, the bus fleet's right there. And so ultimately we felt like this is still the best pathway to go on, is keeping that tank below ground, especially given the different safety precautions that are built in, to these tanks. So I did look into that and feel very confident in recommending that and moving forward with that initial plan, so we can have that done this summer. And then, let's see, for my report, just want to make sure I
When you said we ordered the tank, you mean the company ordered, because the school wouldn't order the gas tank, right?
yes, we do pay for it on order. Yeah.
So you have record of the purchase?
Yep. Now, whether that's through DAFTech or we bought it ourselves, I don't know, but we had to pull the trigger on, order the tank.
Because the concern was that it was within 130 feet from the well water.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, we feel very comfortable that the way that these are built and that they're well made and there's safety measures in place. And I believe those are the two major items. Yep, so that would be it for my report.
I've continued to ask about IT and IT updates and capital improvement projects and have a presentation, and that isn't getting added to the agenda, it isn't happening. How can I go about having that?
About what?
Having IT updates and a capital improvement project, Jason to come in.
I sent you an IT update on September 19th. And I believe Mr. Davis wrote about the capital improvement projects in his, not this board report, but the last board report. The roof, I think that was mentioned. Obviously the well was one of them. This tank is one of them, and I think it was 2 boilers or 2 boiler cells at the middle school. And I think he wrote about all of those, or I updated you, but I could be wrong on the boiler part. You okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All set? Okay.
The principal's reports are in the package. Any questions before we move on to the admin reports, principal reports?
Oh yes, I did wonder on the majors and minors in the middle school packet, what time frame that covered. That's September. It was 48 minors, 52 majors. So I just was wondering how that compares to previous years. And that's hard for you to answer, so I apologize. And you can get back to me next time.
I can answer you.
Okay.
So those are from the beginning of the year till now. And those are really they're very early in the year. We actually went 2 days last week without a single referral. We set the expectations really early, and we made teachers make it very clear what the expectations were up front, and we held students to those expectations. The vast majority of those happened before September 15th. Today, again, we had 3 referrals. They've calmed down immensely. Those are the entire year, but they're definitely slowing down to what they were at the beginning of the year. As compared to previous years, if you look at pre-COVID, because I don't think you can compare anything during COVID, it's a little lower than pre-COVID. One of the years pre-COVID, we had 1,200 referrals throughout the year, so that was about 130 for the month. So it's on par, just a little lower than normal.
Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate it. Because I was going to ask the same thing along the lines of pads. I notice it's isolated to kindergarten, and maybe it's just that they're learning the ways. And hats off to second grade for having that.
God bless our kindergarten teachers. It's not abnormal to see a high rate of behaviors in kindergarten. A lot of students are coming in without having any experience in a school setting or with other students their own age. So as with the middle school, we've been working on those expectations. So it's not abnormal to see some of those behaviors in our kindergarten kiddos, but hopefully as the year moves on, we get used to those routines and those expectations, and you start to see those numbers dwindle.
Thank you, that's what I thought. One other question that I had was the NUIA testing. I'm not sure when we see the results of that so that we can really focus on that.
So the great thing about NUIA is as soon as the 24-hour cycle goes from when we start the testing in the morning, we do have some data available to us. It doesn't provide us with school-wide data until we close out for the district. And so we can, and we've already started at our school looking at kindergarten, first grade, and second grade data because it's already available to us. The window just opened for third and fourth grade, so hopefully once they have finished testing, the middle school and the high school is done, they'll close the window and then we can look at all of the data that's available to us. But it's relatively quick, so our teachers have already started looking at the data because they can already start using that when they're working with students. So that's what's unique about that particular assessment system is it's almost instantaneous data that you can start using.
That's great, thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the things that we can do is, I can ask Mrs. Perry, probably in that December or January report to include NUIA data, if that's something that she has access to K-12, and that way it wouldn't be on the building principals, but they can pull class reports for ELA and math and science for the board. And just like Mrs. Davis said, when that window closes and we pull it for the whole district, we can print those results and let you know what that looks like. I don't have a specific, whether it be December or January, but it would be in that time frame.
That's great, thank you.
Any other questions on the principal proposals?
Mr. Grant, I'm just looking at the PADS enrollment and looking at the fourth grade ratio that sticks out a little bit to me. Are there positions that are we down a position there? Sorry.
Chris, the very last part of your sentence I missed.
Are we down a position?
I mean, staff.
Staff.
Like, so there's there's kind of four. There's more than that, sort of.
So here's where we were really conflicted last year, and those of you who were on the budget committee last year remember we did want to put in another position in fourth grade. At the time, the ratio was 19-1. It is always hard to predict, as I talk about every time I think I get up here and talk about enrollment, who's going to be coming to our school the next year. 19 we thought was manageable. We do have an interventionist that's working with fourth grade team as well as an additional support. And we also have title services. So there are some satellite supports available. We did not anticipate such an enrollment increase in that one grade. So if I could go back and I knew what I know now, then we would have gone for that additional position. I can't justify with numbers coming up. I can't tell you if it would be worth adding another fourth grade position at this point or not, where we have a class of 65 coming through. Doesn't quite make sense.
The nice thing about the middle school is that there's more of a content focus, so one teacher teaches a content. And so at the middle school level, you're not as bound to a classroom teacher ratio, it's sections. So what we would do next year, Mr. Friedman will look at next year, will be 5 sections of math for 5th grade, 5 sections of ELA to get that into that 18-19 range. So we're gonna have to, obviously 93 is a big number.
Anything else? The facilities and track committee.
So, are we going to do a facilities meeting to tour and all of that? Is that something?
Yeah, so I think I saw your email on facilities. I think we should have maybe a workshop with Jason on the CIP plan. Give me a little bit of homework before we get into the budget cycle even, but just to see some of the large upcoming projects that we need to tackle.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple ways you could go about it. Mr. Chassie, I thought he had a really great idea last year. I believe it was November, December, January. I could be off a month on that. He took the facilities members, committee members, subcommittee members around and toured each building and showed those committee members where major projects were right before, an hour before the school committee meeting. And so before like the November meeting, there was a tour with the facilities committee and the building principal and the director, obviously, Mr. Davis. And so that is you could do that, or instead of doing 3 different tours before 3 meetings, you could do a workshop and just get briefed on the 3 projects or the 3 buildings and where, you know, the highest needs of projects were. It really would be up to you. It would definitely, if we were going to do 3 separate meetings, we need to start next month. If we were going to do 1 meeting, we could, you know, we would wait until that late November, just a little bit before budget time, so you could get briefed on the 3 major projects. And we would have a good idea at that point of scope and cost, or at least we'd be getting a better idea about this is how much this would cost.
Do you have a preference?
You might, because you've been here longer, so, and I'm new to the area.
I would just say I appreciated the tours.
Yeah.
I would, and I'd like to do them again, just to get caught up, but having them individually was a lot. I think if we're going to do them, we should just pick a time where we have some availability, call it an hour and a half, and just do it all. And I think that's going to be a little more, I think from the work on the ground, probably Jim and Jason worked on each one each month as they went along. So they did the elementary school, and they had a month to do work, pre-work before they met with us. So maybe a little bit longer getting the 3 schools and the flush grounds and the superintendents, CIP reports all together. And I think we should do the tours all at once, and then maybe have a workshop after that.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I did, just, this is like off the cuff, but I think I'd heard about it too, maybe in a PTA meeting, but it is true that it's very, very dark at the elementary school in the evening in the parking lot. Is there any plans about adding lighting over to the other side of the parking lot?
I haven't heard that. I can talk to Mr. Davis about if there was a plan from last year's committee meetings, because there obviously is like a list of projects that we want to do this year, and then what's on deck, what's in the hole. So I can ask him if that was there, and if it wasn't, if it is a need, what's the cost, right? And get an idea, scope of work, etc.
And then we want to just do an update on track.
Sure.
So the only thing I really thought I would point out is it is going to be on the ballot this year, so if people wanted to learn more information, they can go to the town's website to watch the meetings and get all the supporting documents and go back and get caught up to speed to get clarification. There is also next week, October 13th, a town meeting where they'll discuss the track project that's coming up. But for the most recent information and plans, they can go and find that special meeting that's been recorded on the website.
Good, thank you. Nothing to report on the Finance Committee, Policy Committee?
Can we back up for a second though, please? For the Finance Committee, remind me of the timeline of when we do start to meet, because I think it's important for us to talk about that.
So the first, it's not the Finance Committee, it's the building principals submit their staffing needs and ratios in November. We then meet as an administrative team and talk about positions. For example, last year we would have been talking about 4th grade, right? Do we need a 4th grade teacher? We then begin our budget workshop. Last year we started, this was probably because it was me weird, like in that awkward transition time. We started too late. We started February 28th with finance workshops and committees. So this year we're looking to move that up into early January. So I'll do a staffing analysis with the principals and a positions analysis with the principals in late November and December. They'll submit their, their budget proposals via their team supplies, things that are going on in the building. Facilities will obviously have met at that point to look at any big SIPs projects that we need to do, and then we'll bring the whole board together for our finance workshops. That finance committee is the entire board, like the workshops. The model we went last year was the whole board working together. Hopefully we can do it in less than 4 meetings. That was too many, in my opinion, last year. So we would be looking at January for a board workshop for first budget run through.
Will Jesse and or I be part of the November meeting? Is that a meeting with the principals?
So last year, that was included in the workshop meeting on the February 28th, the principals and the superintendent and committee members, and I think we had a town councilor there, maybe two. But that's certainly something that a committee member could definitely come to, for sure.
I think that would be good, because I thought I heard you say November is when you meet with the administrators, and perhaps it's good for one of us to sit in on, subcommittee sit in on that as well.
Sure, yep.
That would be good.
Anything else? All right, policy.
Nothing to report other than everything we talked about.
What's the date again? What's the date again?
October
25th.
All right.
October 25th. October 25th.
Can I ask you a question about policy? You had mentioned possibly doing IJJ as like a public workshop type of, at that meeting. Is that something you're still planning to do, just to isolate that one by itself, or what were your thoughts?
It's up to you, right?
That was to either you or Kristen or Deb.
I didn't hear the question.
I wasn't sure if you guys were going to isolate the IJJ policy, because you got
So I was planning on having IJJ at October 25th. That was the only policy we were going to look at. With BED and BEDH, I don't know yet. We couldn't do all three. That's not, it's going to have to be those two, and certainly if there's any subcommittee policies to review as well. So I'm not sure right now.
Are you, because you had mentioned including parents or communication and having that be more of a workshop so parents could share their feedback or input.
I had discussed bringing on a parent to speak to that policy, or that particular policy.
So we can't make that be something that the public can participate in. So I'm hearing you're saying.
Currently, the way we run subcommittee meetings is we bring in for example, like we did this one, IJJ I think it was in September, we brought in the principals, curriculum coordinator, obviously our 2 school committee members. We talked about the policy, looked at the sample policy, and submitted a first reading. And so my thought would be to bring in the same group, except bring in a couple of parents for the next meeting.
So the point of what I was saying earlier about involving the public, and like Stephanie was mentioning, that it alleviates getting to this point and having these discussions and then having to table things and bring it back. If we involve the public in the workflow, in the draft, then we can have those ironed out before we do our first reading.
So my concern when we are at subcommittee meeting is to bring a policy that meets the requirements of the law and also takes in the input of what the building principals are experiencing on a daily basis. My concern is not hearing the public and getting all that input to make our policy. Our policies are shaped by statutes. So that's what I'm primarily concerned about. And then I hear the public input, just like you all do in the first reading, where then you have the option to change language. We're just bringing a recommendation based upon what we interpret as a statute. So that was my plan, was to have the principals, some teachers, a couple of parents, and look at I think it was the sample policy from that out-of-state, that IJJ and that out-of-state policy.
Okay, anything else on policy? All right, Technology Committee.
I felt like we had a great meeting. Thank you, Greg, for helping us participate. You've got a great technology background, so I appreciate that input. We're really going to be looking at the one-to-one ratios with the devices. We're really going to be looking at the platforms utilized going forward. I like the fact that we're going to do a survey to survey teachers' input as well as parents. Correct me if I'm wrong. Or are we doing parents or? Teachers. Okay, thank you. We're going to survey the teachers. Oh, and we were going to survey everybody on the subcommittee. Thank you for that. But I think that the one-to-one ratio really is something very important for us to look at and to look at how it's utilized on all grades so that teacher input will be valuable. Do we have a date for our next one?
I do not have a date yet for the next tech committee.
Okay, Spruce?
Nothing to report.
Okay, G, H, I are as reported in the packages. We'll go around the horn. Thank you for our student leaders for joining. It's good to see you guys up here on stage. We appreciate your input, your guidance. It's critical, so it's good seeing you guys here. We'll start with you. Anything to report out on anybody?
This past week was Spirit Week. We had a really good turnout for every day. Our theme was music. And on Friday we had an assembly. All grades were there. A lot of students were there. Friday night there was the homecoming game. And as Mrs. Shorty said, there was a really big turnout there. At the dance on Saturday we had about 370 students, which is the largest dance we've ever had at Hermon High School. And the past week was just really great at our school.
And I'm just going to talk about the National Honor Society induction. So we have that November 1st, and they're going to be sending out invitations soon. And there's going to be 38 new members, which is pretty awesome.
Thank you both. Do we have more microphones for the next meeting?
We're all microphoned out with our jacks up here.
We need to one.
See if we can figure something out. All right. Debbie?
I think I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. Shannon? Kayla?
One thing I did want to bring up was I've been doing some research on having Narcan available for at least, hopefully only in high school, but whatever schools needed. So I did a little research on that, and having that available for the nurses or administrative, I mean, the teachers never know what they're going to come up to or what someone's been treated with, so they get their training and start doing some research on writing policy. I have a sample policy somewhere at home that I'd love to help facilitate with the nurses and administrators, just making sure that we can have prompt treatment to staff or students.
I sent a sample policy of naloxone today, actually. It's funny you should bring that up because I saw that rainbow, the iteration. I saw the rainbow iteration of fentanyl in the news over the weekend. And I reached out to an area superintendent. Their subcommittee is also working on a naloxone policy, so she sent me their sample. And I reached out to Mr. Morgan today as well, just to see if there are any specific restrictions. Mr. Walsh brought this up to me probably a month ago-ish. We've been talking about it. I think you're going to see that very soon, and I appreciate that willingness to work with our nurses because it's, I think in the past when we've talked about that item, it's always been, there's been some, what's the word, there's like a discomfort, but we don't realize that this could actually be not only a student who overdoses, but a teacher or an assistant principal doing a search who accidentally, right? Like that's I mean, they're all terrifying, but that's where I think we really have to take this very seriously. Yes, Stephanie, yeah, good luck, wear some gloves. So thank you for bringing that up, and it's just nice that that got brought up, because that way the people in the public won't be shocked when they, when they see that policy coming through for the first reading, because it's an epidemic in the game. So thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
I'm okay.
Steph?
The only thing I had, two quick things, an update on the SRO and the athletic event fees for students to look at potentially having those waived. I know the Boosters Club, it's something we'd have to factor into the budget, but I know that a lot of money is made at those football games from the Boosters Club, so just, we want students to attend those events. I know that some do allow for students to show up, so I just think it would be great for students to have that ability to support other students.
Stephanie, what was the first one?
SRO, Security, Safety Resource Officer.
Okay, Kristen?
I don't really know if this is an agenda item for us, but I did mention to Micah that it's going to be my legacy as a senior mom to leave behind that all athletes receive a banner, senior athletes receive a banner when they graduate for whatever, every single season that they play a game. We could even do it for those children that are going to be in Greece, because I'm really excited to see that. The seniors could have banners for those types of activities too, but I think that working with Douglas to do those banners. So right now, that is a parent-driven thing. So like golf has never had banners for their seniors, and this season they did because I made it happen. So that's something that I think that needs to happen across the board, and we can ask boosters to pay for that every season. So if Rick knows who the seniors are that are on the roster, that can be brought to the Boosters Club to then request those fundings, or if Stephanie Erb is in charge of show choir, those things that she's doing, you can bring those lists to the Booster Club, and we can look at that and really support those kids and let them leave with that memorabilia for the time that they had here as a senior. So.
What is a banner? It's educating.
Okay, so it's a picture of yourself in your uniform or in your costume or whatever that. So Douglas took them. Mr. Douglas took the pictures, and then he sends them away, and then they come in a banner that's like life size, or half life size. And then you can hang them up at the games, or you could have them in the school, or you could bring them home. I mean, so that's something that I would like to be kind of part of the process of what just happens as part of the school community and culture. The other thing that we had brought up, I think, last year that might be agenda item, whether it's next or in the next few months, is, and you brought it up, Jesse, is the full day pre-K.
Okay. I don't have anything. I think I will be on vacation for the next committee meeting, so I won't be here for the November meeting, and Kristen will be filming it. All right, item 9, approval of warrants. We can take those all in one if you guys would like. If I could get a motion.
Motion to approve the warrants as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And we need a motion to enter into executive session.
Motion to enter executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056C at 8:34.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Who was the second